I'm a 35-year-old woman, and for most of my life, I've been the invisible middle child in a small town where people wave at each other in grocery store parking lots but don't say anything real. You don't talk about dysfunction here. You smile, you wave, and you carry whatever your family throws at you like it's just part of the package. Growing up, my role wasn't really up for debate. My older sister was the golden one, always out-achieving. My younger brother was the sensitive one who everyone tiptoed around. Me? I was the helper, the runner, the default babysitter, errand girl, extra pair of hands. I wasn't praised. I was used. That was just normal. After college, I had a job lined up in the city, but then my dad had a stroke. Everything dropped. My sister had just moved out of state with her new fiancé, and my brother refused to step foot in hospitals. He said the smell made him anxious. So I came back home, thinking it would be for a few months. I ended up staying for 3 years. I managed the hospital visits, made sense of the medication schedule, paid the bills, argued with insurance, cooked meals that fit his new dietary needs, and drove him to physical therapy twice a week. I still worked full-time too. I don't think anyone in my family ever asked how I was doing. Not once. It wasn't even a question they seemed to think about. When he passed, I thought something would shift, that someone would acknowledge what I had done, not a trophy. Just a thank you. What I got was my mom looking me in the eye and saying, "We all lost him. You're not special." That was it. That was the closest thing I ever got to recognition. My sister came back for the funeral. She posted a photo with our dad, one taken years ago, and made the caption sound like they'd been close the whole time. People commented things like, "So sorry for your loss, and he was so proud of you." She liked every single one. While I was still trying to write the eulogy, my brother was in the garage collecting tools and yard equipment. Said he'd been meaning to get those things before someone else grabbed them. I hadn't even had time to go through my dad's dresser yet, but apparently the weed whacker had more sentimental value. When I brought it up to my mom later, told her it felt like they were all just pretending nothing had happened, pretending I hadn't carried the entire thing alone. She rolled her eyes and said, "Always the martyr." That night, I drove straight to a small studio apartment I'd looked at a few months back. It was tiny, above a bakery, smelled like cinnamon every morning, and I signed the lease the next day. I didn't make a big announcement. I just left. The house had started to feel like a coffin with working plumbing. Every dinner after that was a performance. My brother would brag about his new job, my sister would FaceTime in to show off her kids, and anytime I tried to speak, even just to say I was tired or still having trouble sleeping, I got told I was bringing the mood down or starting something. Eventually, I just stopped speaking. No one noticed. I washed the dishes. I took out the trash. I showed up with wine when asked. And when birthdays came, 3 years in a row, mine wasn't even mentioned. No card, no call, nothing. I still showed up to theirs though. I bought gifts. I smiled through cake. Somewhere in that 3rd year, I started keeping a journal. Not to process feelings or anything soft like that, just to keep a record. Proof that I wasn't making this up in my head. Because when you grow up in a family like mine, you start to doubt even your own memory. One dinner, I brought dessert. My brother's wife took one look at me and said, "You're lucky you don't have kids. You only have to take care of yourself." She said it like it was a compliment, like I should be grateful to be excluded from the world they all got to live in. That night I didn't cry. I made tea. I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. Then I packed a bag. Just essentials, clothes, a few books, my journal. And I wrote down one line, "They think silence makes me weaker. But it's going to make me free." I didn't send a message. I didn't slam a door. I just left everything behind the same way they always did, quietly, like it was no big deal. But this time, I wasn't coming back. The first thing I did was leave the family group chat. No announcement, no final message. Just tapped exit and closed the app. 5 full days went by with nothing. No call, no text. No, "Are you okay?" That told me everything I needed to know. I changed my phone number the next week. New plan, different carrier. I didn't send the number to anyone. Not my mother, not my siblings, not a single cousin. For once, I wanted to hear from no one and owe nothing. Then I looked at my monthly charges and saw I was still paying for 2 streaming platforms that were being used in 3 different states. I logged in, changed the passwords, and canceled both accounts. Nobody reached out to ask why they couldn't log in anymore. They just moved on, probably to someone else's subscription. That's how it always went. The car was next. The old SUV that had turned into a family shuttle, school runs for my niece, emergency grocery trips for my mom, airport pickups for my brother. I listed it, sold it in under a week, and bought a smaller secondhand sedan. Clean interior, low miles, nothing fancy. This time, no one else got a spare key. A few days later, I got a call from a cousin's number, my mother. She wanted to know if I was coming to my niece's birthday party that weekend. I said no. She paused, then told me I was being cruel. I said I wasn't pretending anymore. She hung up without another word. That was the last voice-to-voice conversation we had. I walked into the local credit union where my mother worked and pulled every dollar from my savings account. The teller looked confused. I didn't explain. I moved everything to a private bank in another city. Set up new logins, passwords, 2-step verification. Quiet, freedom in numbers. I stopped doing favors. No more dog sitting. No more medicine pickups. No more houseplant watering or weekend check-ins. Every time I'd said yes over the years, it chipped away at something. I didn't owe anyone errands anymore. The invitations kept coming. Birthdays, cookouts, anniversaries. I said no to every single one. No big explanations. Just can't make it. A few people stopped inviting me after that. The ones who kept trying started to get suspicious. I didn't give them anything to work with. My sister sent a text after 2 months. Something vague about missing our bond. No apology. No ownership. Just the usual bait. I didn't answer. She tried once more after that with a photo of her kids and the caption, "They miss you." Still no reply from me. At work, I started saying yes instead to new projects, volunteer roles, weekend workshops. Things I used to turn down because I was too tired from juggling everything back home. Turns out when your energy isn't being drained constantly, it actually builds something. I got promoted 3 months later. Better title, better pay, better hours. I used the extra income to book a 3-night stay at a cabin on the Oregon coast. Just me, no TV, no Wi-Fi. The first night I sat outside in a thick wool blanket and listened to the sea crash against the rocks. There were no voices, no one needed me. It was the quietest thing I'd ever experienced. While I was there, I made a list of every time I'd been called selfish, dramatic, cold, ungrateful. I filled 3 pages. None of those moments were about things I'd done. They were always about what I refused to do. That's when it finally clicked. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them. The version of family that only existed in my head. The one where people checked on each other without expecting something in return. Where birthdays were remembered without a reminder. Where grief was shared instead of dismissed. I came back from that trip with nothing changed on the outside. Same apartment, same job, same street, but everything was different. My phone didn't buzz with demands. My weekends weren't taken. My inbox was clean. I had space. I had time. I used that time to clear out the junk drawer in my kitchen, label every spice in my rack, deep clean the bathroom grout with an old toothbrush. I did small things that felt pointless before because I never had the energy for them. I organized my books by color. I alphabetized my pantry. It wasn't about being productive. It was about reclaiming my hours. A week later, a cousin tagged me in a group photo on social media. Everyone was at some family dinner, smiling, laughing. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't missed. I untagged myself and deleted the app. That was the last thread I'd left hanging. They didn't reach out again. Not that week. Not the next. I think they were waiting for me to cave, to feel guilty, to come back. But nothing came. Not even a knock at my door. It turns out, when a doormat gets up and walks away, most people don't chase it. They just look around for a new one. The first thing I did was update my emergency contact at work. It had been my mother for over a decade. I replaced her name with a coworker I trusted. No ceremony, just a form and a signature. I shredded the old copy. Then I went through every account I had online. Facebook, Instagram, old photo apps, group calendar invites. Slowly, one by one, I removed every family member from everything. No blocking, no dramatic messages, just deleted them like you'd delete junk emails. Quiet clicks. No more shared access. A cousin messaged me a few days later, said the family was worried, thought I might be having some kind of breakdown. I told her if they were that concerned, they should stop watching so closely and start reflecting instead. I never heard back from her after that. I met with a lawyer and updated my will. There's not a lot, some savings, a few personal items, but enough to leave behind. I listed 2 charities, both small, both local. The rest goes to 2 friends. People who showed up. People who didn't expect explanations. Explanations. The only name missing was the one everyone would expect. I hosted brunch the next Sunday. Just 4 people. I made cinnamon rolls, fruit salad, eggs. Nothing fancy. It was the first time in years I sat at a table where the laughter didn't feel like a performance. Nobody asked me to pick someone up from the airport. Nobody asked for a loan or a favor. They just passed the orange juice and complimented the jam I made from scratch. 2 days later, my brother showed up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door. I watched him through the peephole while he knocked, paced, knocked again. Then silence. After 10 minutes, he left. He hasn't tried again since. A week after that, my niece sent a message from a new number. Just one line, I miss you. She's too young to understand what's going on. I wrote back, I miss you too, sweetie, and left it at that. Later that night, a text came from my sister, same number she always used. This time it just said, don't involve the kids. I didn't respond. I hadn't said anything unkind. I hadn't pulled anyone in. If guilt was showing up, it wasn't mine. The next morning, I called a locksmith. Even though no one had a key, I wanted a reset. New locks. New set. No copies handed out. I watched as he swapped them, then tested them myself. The door clicked differently when I turned the handle. Cleaner. Final. After that, I went through the last box I hadn't opened since moving. It had old family photo albums, broken picture frames, my dad's sweater from when he used to take me to the park. I took out each item, held it, and made a decision. I kept none of it. I packed it into donation bags and dropped it off that afternoon. They weren't memories anymore. They were weights. With that space clear, I started waking up early. Not for anyone else, just to use the time. I bought a cheap bicycle and started riding at sunrise. No music, just the tires on pavement and birds waking up. I learned how to make small loaves of bread in my toaster oven. I wrote little poems in a dollar notebook that didn't rhyme and didn't need to. Some about bread, some about trees, one about my broken vacuum cleaner. A friend came over one night to borrow a pan and asked if I was scared. Not about them, just scared to be on my own. I said it without thinking, you can't be cut off from something you already walked away from. She nodded and didn't ask again. The silence that used to feel sharp now felt soft. The kind of silence that doesn't expect anything from you. No sudden phone calls, no guilt-tripped favors, no surprise drop-ins. Just quiet. I wasn't waking up tense anymore. I wasn't checking my phone 5 times before noon to see who was upset or annoyed. I started skipping weekends on social media entirely. Then weekdays. Then I just stopped posting altogether. A few nights later, I baked a new kind of bread and brought a loaf to a neighbor I barely knew. She gave me back a jar of homemade pickles. We didn't talk long, just exchanged food like it was normal, like I'd always lived this way. I stood at my window that night and looked out at the streetlights. I used to think peace meant everything was okay between people. Now I knew peace was what happened when you didn't need them to be okay with you. No one from my family had tried anything new since my sister's last text. No surprises, no cards, no doorstep appearances. I started to believe maybe they were done trying. Or maybe they just moved on to the next person willing to carry everything for free. Either way, I didn't forgive them. I didn't hate them either. I just didn't think about them much anymore. And that, for once, felt like enough. 3 months into full silence, things shifted. Not for me, but for them. The gap I left finally started to feel real on their end. That's when the noise began again. A package showed up at my office, no return address. Inside was a scrapbook labeled Family Memories. It was full of old birthday photos, holiday dinners, and vacations. Most of the pages had everyone else front and center. I was either cropped at the edge or missing entirely. On one page, my arm was visible holding a cake, but the rest of me had been cut out. I handed it to a coworker who teaches crafts to her niece, told her she could use it for scrapbooking. No reason to keep fake memories glued in place. A few days later, a woman I vaguely recognized stopped me in the grocery store. She used to be friends with my mother. She asked if everything was okay at home. I told her everything was fine, then added that maybe some people weren't used to me having boundaries. She nodded like she understood, but the expression didn't match. After that, I sent an email to HR, told them clearly no information was to be shared with anyone asking about me, no matter who they claimed to be. I flagged my profile as private in the company directory. They said it had already happened once, someone called pretending to be my uncle asking if I still worked there. That same week, my landlord mentioned a man had come by asking for me, said he was my brother, said it was important. I told him there was no reason for anyone like that to be looking for me. Then I typed up a short letter and handed it to the leasing office, official request to share zero information with anyone who mentioned family. No names, no exceptions. I deleted my LinkedIn account the next day. It wasn't worth the risk of someone phishing through my coworkers. One less door to leave open. Instead, I joined a pottery class on weekends. Not because I wanted to be artistic, I just needed something slow. One of the women there invited me to her book club. I went. We sat in a circle eating store-bought cookies and talking about a novel with a main character who kept giving up parts of herself for people who never thanked her. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Everyone in that room understood what the silence meant. I started a small road trip habit after that. Nothing big. Just one town, one night, no real plans. I picked a place, drove there, stayed in a cheap room, explored on foot, and left. Sometimes I talked to locals. Sometimes I didn't speak at all. It became a reset button. At a lakeside inn, I caught my own reflection in the water during sunset. I didn't look away. I didn't cringe. I just stared. That had never happened before. When I got home that week, a flower arrangement was sitting on my doormat. Drooping roses, baby's breath browned at the edges. No card, no note, no delivery slip. Just something left there by someone trying to send a message without saying a word. I scooped it up into a trash bag and dropped it straight into the bin. They weren't trying to make anything right. They weren't asking for truth, or understanding, or even closure. They just wanted access again. Access to my time, my attention, my availability. That access was gone. That door wasn't just closed. It was locked, sealed, and no longer theirs to knock on. A letter showed up at my mailbox service addressed to miss you. No return address on the envelope, just handwriting I recognized. Inside, it was from my sister. I didn't open it. I sealed it again and returned it to sender with a note, not at this address. A few days later, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in over a year sent me an email with a group photo from a recent wedding. Everyone was there, my siblings, cousins, extended family. I wasn't invited. No one had even mentioned it. She wrote something like, "Wish you were here." I deleted the email without replying. I started spending 2 mornings a week at a local women's center. Just basic help, sorting donations, prepping hygiene kits, organizing intake forms. No one knew my last name. No one asked questions. The peace came from not being expected to play a role. I was just another set of hands. While organizing my closet, I found an old folded paper wedged behind a storage bin. It was a holiday shopping list I made 5 years ago. Names of people to buy gifts for. My name wasn't on it. Not even at the bottom. That afternoon, I bought myself a gift, a dark brown leather planner and a good pen. Something that made time feel solid. My hours finally belonged to me. During lunch with my closest friend, she asked if I'd ever explain the family thing to a future partner. I told her I'd explain it once, if asked. Not again. Not in pieces. Not to defend anything. I picked up a freelance job staging small apartments. Open houses, rentals, move-ins, color, space, function. No clutter. No hidden meaning. Just clean lines and good lighting. The work was steady and clear. The decisions were mine. While sourcing secondhand decor, I dropped off a donation box at a local shop. Inside were the last pieces of my childhood room, a faded lamp, a snow globe, an old pillow with a torn seam. Things that had survived every move but never held real value. I figured if no one else had cherished them, I didn't need to either. In another bin, I found one photo of me and my dad fishing. I must have been 12. We were both laughing, and for once I wasn't cropped out or behind someone. I framed it and placed it on my bookshelf. One photo. Tatai? That was enough. Later that week, a birthday card arrived from my mother. No note, just happy birthday and my name in looping script. I didn't open it. I slid it back into the envelope, wrote return to sender, and dropped it off at the post office. That birthday had come and gone too many times without a word. I didn't need her trying to rewrite it now. I met up with my regular friend group and asked them directly not to pass along any more messages from my family, not even the dramatic ones. They agreed. One of them laughed and said, "We're not your mailman." That was enough confirmation. I changed my legal mailing address the same week. New P.O. box. Different neighborhood. Nothing from my past should have been landing on my porch anymore, but I wanted the separation to be official. No more shared zip codes. My days filled up with things I chose, reading in silence, cooking meals for one, helping neighbors, reorganizing shelves, finding flowers that didn't need much sunlight. There were no emergencies, no late night guilt calls, no "can you come over" real quick messages, just peace. While pouring coffee one morning, I looked around my space. Everything was calm, no bags near the door, no voice raised from the other room. It hit me they hadn't lost me. They never even saw me. What they lost was the person who showed up, stayed late, said yes, and didn't complain. I didn't vanish. I wasn't erased. I just stepped off the stage they only lit when they needed help carrying something heavy. A message popped up from a number I didn't recognize. It was a distant relative, someone I hadn't seen since a family barbecue 5 years ago. The text read, "Hey, just checking, are you still planning the family reunion this year?" I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I replied, "I haven't been part of that in a long time," deleted the thread, and blocked the number. That weekend, I took a trip to a new city. I didn't follow any guidebooks or lists. I wandered through local markets, stopped at random cafes, window shopped without buying anything, and ate pastries on park benches. Nobody knew my name. No one asked who I was related to. Inside a small independent bookstore, I ended up chatting with the owner. He asked where I was from. I told him, somewhere I outgrew. He nodded like he'd heard that before. Back home, a cousin I used to get along with reached out, said she'd heard from others that I was in some kind of controlling group. I told her if peace is control, then I'm glad to have it. She asked to meet in person, just coffee, no family talk. I agreed once. We met at a quiet corner cafe. We talked about books, old movies, places we both wanted to visit someday. She never brought up my family, and I never asked about hers. It was the kind of conversation that ends with a hug and no expectations. At work, I started mentoring a younger colleague. She reminded me of myself at 25, always saying yes, staying late, apologizing for things that weren't her fault. I told her what no one ever told me. If you say yes to everything, you're saying no to yourself. She wrote it down. That night, I made a playlist of old songs I used to play on repeat back in high school. No sad ballads. Just loud, messy tracks that made me dance around barefoot in my kitchen. I hadn't moved like that in years. My upstairs neighbor knocked once about the noise. I turned it down, not off. I started sleeping through the night without waking up in a cold sweat. No dreams about slam doors or guilt texts. Just trees, ocean waves, and once, a dream where I opened a bakery, even though I can't bake for more than 2 people. I invited a few friends over for dinner. No takeout, no frozen trays. I made a roast from scratch, rolled out handmade pasta, and baked a pie that didn't burn. We sat around my small table with mismatched chairs and empty plates. Someone said I seemed different. I said I stopped trying to fix things that never wanted to be healed. Nobody argued. The next week, HR at my office pulled me aside. A card had arrived again, this time mailed directly to the company. They didn't give it to me. They'd already returned it to sender with a formal notice about my privacy request on file. It had been sent by my mother. That was the last time I ever heard about any attempt to reach me. That night, I went into my closet, pulled out the stack of old journals I'd kept for years, entries filled with dates, quotes, lists, and receipts of everything I'd survived. I flipped through one, saw a page where I'd written "Remember this. You're not crazy." I tore it out. Then I tossed the rest. I didn't need proof anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I wasn't holding my breath for an apology. I didn't need someone to understand my side, and I didn't want a reunion. I just wanted peace. And for the first time in a long time, I had it. A full year passed. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I didn't mark the anniversary with a post or a journal entry. Just went for a long walk through my neighborhood without my phone. No destination, no steps to track. Just a quiet walk on a quiet street. I stopped counting holidays and birthdays. They weren't checkpoints anymore, just regular days with regular meals. When the holidays came around, I cooked something small, turned on some jazz, and finally finished the book I'd restarted 3 times before. This time, there were no interruptions. At work, someone asked if I ever missed them, my family. I said I missed being someone they never allowed me to be, but I didn't miss the version of myself that had to exist around them. That answer seemed to be enough. My apartment is never fully quiet. There's always something, neighbors laughing, cars outside, a pan clanging, me humming off key while folding laundry. But it's mine. Every sound belongs here. Every silence, too. I framed one photo and hung it above my desk. It's not of them. It's not even of anyone else. Just me, on a foggy beach morning, arms outstretched facing the ocean. No filter, no caption. I looked like someone who belonged to herself. I started painting again. Not well. Not for anyone else. Just color on canvas. Some pieces looked like storms. Some looked like nothing. But none of them asked for approval. Every Sunday evening, I write down 3 things I did just for myself. Sometimes it's trying a new dish. Sometimes it's saying no to something that drains me. Sometimes it's buying flowers just because they looked cheerful. That list adds up week by week. I unsubscribed from every email list connected to the town I left. The school board, the town newsletter, even the shop where I once bought gifts for everyone but myself. One by one, I hit unsubscribe. I don't live there, not even online. On Saturdays, I visit the weekend market a few blocks away. There's a vendor who sells fresh herbs and always remembers my name. Every time, it still catches me off guard. There's a letter I once wrote, everything I ever wanted to say. I never sent it. It sits in the back of a drawer, folded, unsealed. I haven't read it in months. Some things don't need to be mailed to be finished. At a small dinner party, someone brought up my mother in passing. I changed the subject with a smile and kept the conversation moving. I didn't explain. I don't explain anymore. I started saving, not for a house or car, but for a solo trip to a place I've always been afraid to visit. It doesn't scare me the same way now. It feels more like freedom than fear. I taught myself how to sew a button back on a coat. Took me 3 tries. It stayed on. That was enough. I don't dream about arguments anymore. Just quiet, soft scenes. I wake up slow. Mornings aren't rushed now. A friend once asked what I'd say to my younger self. I said, you weren't dramatic. You were unheard. But that silence won't define you forever. I deleted the emergency contact sheet I used to keep tucked in my wallet. It had numbers I no longer needed. There are no emergencies that require people I no longer trust. One morning, while watering my windowsill herbs, I said out loud, I don't hate them. It wasn't rehearsed. It was just true. Indifference feels cleaner than anger. They're still out there, probably living their version of normal, but I'm not circling them anymore. I've got my own center now. They used to call it bitterness. Let them. I call it a boundary, and it's the best thing I've ever given myself.